A pleasant Monday evening to you all, as this is a bit of an emergency edition of the poorly produced Brandon Warne podcast project, which has been on infinite hiatus basically since it started. Anyway, glad to have you back and glad to have you listening here tonight as, again, it's a little bit of breaking news situation here. Ron Gardenhire let go by the Twins earlier in the day after four straight 90 loss seasons, only the second time in team history that I know of that the Twins have lost 90 games in a row, or 90 games four times in a row, the other time being 1997 to 2000 when Tom Kelly kept his job before stepping aside after the next season when the Twins won 85 games, I believe it was, to hand it over to Gardy and basically started that postseason run or stretch of winning seasons from 2002 to 2010, basically, which is what has brought us full circle to this point that we're at here. First of all, I want to say a special thank you to John Bonus for teaching me how to use these headphones so I have a little better sound. So if you are hearing better sound this time, you can say thank you to him, the Twins Geek. Thank you very much for that. Anyway, I want to get through this quickly because I want everybody to listen to Twins Hangouts tonight at Twins Daily. Jeremy Nygaard and Seth Stolz do a great job with that. So if you're listening to me, I hope you listen to them as well. They do a really nice job. They've had me on a couple times, and give them your listen. Back to the point at hand, Gardy out after 13 seasons at the helm of the Twins, 1,068 wins, 1,039 losses, so about 30 games over 500. First place finishes 6 different times, and it is a bittersweet day. I penned that long piece that maybe some of you had seen on BrandonWarne.com, basically chronicling my thoughts of where the Twins have been and where they're going and how they need to get there. And I kind of drew a conclusion at the end that if the Twins weren't going to make sweeping changes now, there was no sense in ever making the changes, because what worse can happen than 4 straight seasons of 90 losses? If there is anything worse, I don't think Twins fans want to see what that is. That, by a lot of people, was mistaken as me calling for Gardy's head. It was me calling for him to be let go. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. The problem is, it's just, at some point it gets to become a stale pattern of losing that needs to be shaken one way or another. And right or wrong, from a PR standpoint, the Twins had to do something. I've always been someone who's advocated for the idea that if you listen to the fans, eventually you'll be sitting with them. And basically that just boils down to fans are reactionary. Fans make snap judgments. Fans might think that a player is great for the first month of his career and then he falls off and they never want to see him again. And don't really think about the evolution of a big league player. So those snap judgments shouldn't be made by big league teams, especially people in charge of making those decisions. But I don't think you can say it's a snap decision. You can say they weren't given any talent to work with. But that 2011 team, with the exception of J.J. Hardy, was a lot of the same guys back from that 2010 team that was pretty awesome. One of the best Twins teams in my lifetime, and I was alive for 2 World Series champions, and I think 2010 and 2006 were 2 of the best teams of my lifetime. I think they could possibly beat both those other 2 teams, but there's just no way of knowing it. And again, I don't want to say that Gardy was a bad manager. He was a great manager in his own respect and in certain ways. I, for one, was always a little bit uncertain how I felt about lineups. I mean, Joe Mauer never batted leadoff, despite being the best on-base percentage guy on the team since the beginning. And a lot of times batting guys in the number 2 hole in front of Mauer that really did nothing for you. Not necessarily like a Jamie Carroll so much, but if Nick Punto was struggling, still got to bat him right in front of Joe Mauer and that sort of thing. And obviously he was a player's manager. The players would run through a brick wall for Ron Gardenhire, and I don't think there's any denying that. And we're seeing that kind of outpouring today. Trevor Plouffe especially, showing up at Target Field in his camo shorts and his sling on his forearm that he actually is getting operated on, whether it was today or in the next couple of days. Not really important, but the outpouring of support for Gardenhire, and I don't think it's from a good soldier mentality. And for me, the good soldier mentality boils down to none of these guys are going to say they didn't think Ron Gardenhire was fit for the job or deserve to be fired. Nobody would ever say that. And that's part of the image the Twins have cultivated or created basically with the stability of the last almost 30 years, which is hard to believe, with Tom Kelly and Ron Gardenhire managing the team in that span. I think Carol Evans said, one American League Central team in that time frame has had 12 managers, another team has had 11, and then the two other teams have had 8. And the Twins with 2, I mean, that's unbelievable. And my thoughts about Gardenhire as a manager really aren't that big of a deal. What's important to note, on 7 different occasions, he finished in the top 3 for Manager of the Year, including in 2010 winning the Manager of the Year, and that kind of capped his time as an effective manager, or the manager of an effective team. Might be more fair, but at the same time, I think a move just had to be made, and I don't like that intangible thing. I don't like grasping at straws, trying to make up a narrative, and I don't like the forced narratives on baseball. But I just think it was time. And when we look back at when history reflects on Gardenhire's tenure, this won't be his legacy. I don't think 90 losses the last 4 years will be his legacy, and it shouldn't be. And I don't think losing in the playoffs should even be his legacy. I think his legacy should be as one of the finest managers in Twins history. And again, that list isn't particularly big or populated, but he was a guy who he was part of the group of men that were there when Minnesota baseball was saved. And he should always be remembered for that. He should always be remembered for a manager of many, many good teams. Because there was always the prevailing sentiment that he had the team that Tom Kelly handed to him. Well, how many of those Tom Kelly holdovers were there when they won Game 163 in 2009 or 94 games in 2010? I mean, I think it's a convenient excuse. So I'm not really buying it. If you go down the list of tweets today by Mike Berardino as I bring it up here, you can kind of get a feel for what the press conference was like today. I'm admittedly upset that I didn't go to the press conference. I'm not a media member right now, or not a media member anymore. So I'm not necessarily bitter about that, but it does disappoint me to see that, that I'm not able to do that anymore. But anyway, Berardino, probably the best beat reporter in the Twin Cities, and that's not a backhanded compliment by any means, because there's some pretty good beat reporters in this town. But you look at the quotes coming out of there today. Terry Ryan says there's no Twins way. That's a fallacy. It's the right way. I don't know how that took steam. It's the right way to play a game. And Terry Ryan came under a lot of fire today too, because people were wondering, well, what the heck? Why wasn't Terry Ryan fired? I don't have a good answer for that. He's been with the Twins longer than Gardy, and he's been the architect of some pretty good teams and some pretty bad teams, and there's no running from that either. But at the same time, the farm system the Twins have in play right now, even with the steps back that I think it took or has taken in the last year, is it's still commendable. Whether he's to thank for that or if somebody else like Darren Johnson is like that, I'm not really clear on that. So you got the Phil Hughes move and you've got the Ricky Nolasco move. You pump them up a little bit and you bring them down a couple pegs for both of those. So for me, there's nobody in baseball that I respect more than Terry Ryan, but Gardy was right up there on that list. If they had let them both go, I would have understood if they would have let one and not the other like they did. I get it. At the end of the day, I don't know that there's a right or wrong way. And again, the Twins are not prone to making these kind of moves, so there's not really a map for them to follow or to stick to. So it's hard for me to really judge that one way or another really harshly. Now, one thing that I did as the afternoon wore on and I decided to have this podcast here, I reached out on Facebook and Twitter and I said I wanted some guys or folks to ask questions, and if they had anything for me, I would give them a shout out here and try to answer as best I can. So I do have a few of them lined up here. Zach Sanders, a friend of mine from Seattle, the Seattle, Washington area, said, "Who are your picks for the next manager, both preferred and likely?" Similarly, Ryan Turnquist, a friend of mine who is an usher at Target Field and he's still going to college in South Dakota, asked pretty much same kind of thing. He said, "Who are your top 5 manager candidates?" So I broke it down to internal and external because I think that's really only the fair way to do it. Internally, I think it goes like Molitor at the top, Terry Steinbach second, Gene Glenn third. Molitor has got the respect and the ear of everybody in that clubhouse. From what I've experienced and what I've seen, even to me, I don't really understand how this works or why it is this way, but he seemed to really have the ears of the Hispanic players too. Like when he would come in there, the guys like Pedro Florimon back when he was with the team, and Eduardo Escobar would kind of flock to him. And I don't know if that was due to his roving instructor skills on the minor league side where those guys got to know him a little better. It doesn't really add up because neither of those guys played a lot of minor league baseball with the Twins, but it's unclear to me, but it seems like Molitor had the ear of the younger players, which is undoubtedly got to be a big part of what's going to go into the next manager. Steinbach, rave reviews for him as a bench coach and as a catching guy, helping out. I think, again, great manager candidate. Might be a candidate for Arizona, too. Hopefully the Twins don't let him get away. But what's right is right for him and his family. He lives in the northwest suburbs here, and I think he will keep his roots in Minneapolis. But he's got to do what's right for him. And then Gene Glenn, a lot of respect for what he's done in Rochester the last few years. Know that he's well regarded in the organization. And so any of those 3 guys, I could see. Doug Minkiewicz, too. I'd probably put Doug Minkiewicz ahead of Steinbach, to be honest with you. Jake Mauer's in that mix, too. In all honesty, I think it's Molitor at the top, and then it's the other 4 just kind of in a jumble there. And the Twins, whatever direction they take, it'll be interesting to see what the dynamics are at play. Now, if you look externally, I think Dave Martinez, the bench coach for the Tampa Bay Rays, has to be at the top of that list. You got a guy that, in Martinez, has learned from the best in Joe Madden with the Tampa Bay Rays. And, I think... I just think you get a guy like that who's believed to be one of the more up-and-coming minds would be a good move. Tony Pena is another guy. I believe he's coaching for the Yankees right now, but he's still in the business too. Pena, and then Ozzie Guillen, another name that's come up, which would be a ballsy choice if you ask me. Those 2 guys, they are, how would I put this? You may want to get Hispanic speakers in the house to connect with these younger Hispanic players because there's so many coming up through the pipelines, including Eddie Rosario, including Miguel Sano, Jose Barrios, all these guys who could use a connection of that type. Now, I'm not saying it's a must or a need or anything like that, but I think, it's just another priority. It's something that Terry Ryan spoke to. I believe Mike Berardino, again, asked him about that. It was just, do you want a Spanish speaker? And Terry said, well, diversity is going to be a very big deal for us. So if one of those guys isn't the manager, I think you still have to have a Spanish influence on your bench one way or another. Now, a couple other names that were mentioned by Rhett Bollinger, MLB.com reporter, were Joe McEwing, who I believe is working with the White Sox right now, former utility infielder for the Mets. Again, supposedly has that acumen of a good baseball guy. Scrappy middle infielder who was just kind of a gritty guy. Might be a good leader of men. I don't know. It feels like a Twins move to me, but the Twins have lost 90 games the last 4 years, so feeling like a Twins move doesn't necessarily equate to anything good. And then the last name I saw tonight again from Rhett was Torey Lovullo of the Boston Red Sox. And I believe he got hot and heavy with a couple different situations in the last couple years as far as managerial candidate. Might have even been the Red Sox where he's at now, but I can't remember for sure. But I believe he was a catcher for the California Angels back in the day, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's kind of my list. If I were to go top to bottom, it might be Martinez 1, Molitor 1A, and then everybody else after that. Though, from everything I've heard, Dave Martinez is a very good candidate, and hopefully the Twins would give him a look. A couple last questions. Why not fire the GM and the scouting staff? I think what we found is the GM and the scouting staff are what have this farm where it's at now. They're a little closer to ownership, so it's a power distance thing. And the last question, because I'm running out of time here, how desirable is this Twins job to potential applicants? I think it is a great, great possible job that a lot of people are going to be interested in because it's a low payroll, room to spend, and prospects coming up. Thanks for listening, and have a great night.